Jaya Gopi Janava Kirivara Dari Yasoda Nandana Vrajana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Vrajana Ranjana Ramunatira Manachari Yamunatira Manachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading second canto Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 7, text 1. Yatra Dhyayataha Jipti Talodaranyaya Bibhat Klodim Anum Sakala Jaga Mayim Ananta Antar Mahanava Upagatam Adi Daityam Tam Damstrayadrim Eva Raja Daro Dadra Yatro Dayata Chiti Talo Dadanaya Bifrat Rodim Tanum Saka Pagatim adijaitam. Tam damastara dream eva vrajataro dara. Yatro dadyata chititalo daranyaya biprat. Prodim tanum sakala jagamaimananta. Antermanava pagatim adi daityam. Tam dam stara dream eva vrajataro darara. Was that 3 times? One more, okay. Yatro daryata chitti talo darananaya piprat. Prodim tanum sakala jagamaimananta. Anter mahanava bhagatam adidaitam. Tam dam starai dream eva vraja daro dadara.
Brahmovacha,
Brahmovacha.
Trojata, Shiti, Talodaranaya Bibra,
Tadro dayata chititalo darananaya bivrat.
Odim Tanum Sakala, Yagyamahimanantaha,
Prodim tanum sakala jagamaimananta.
Antar Maharnava, Bhagavatam
Antar maranava bhagatam adityatam.
Tangdang Strayadrim, Iva Vajradaro Dadara,
Tam dam staro dream eva braja daro dara.
Brahmovacha
Brahmovacha.
Yatro Jatakshiti Talo Daranaya Bibrat
Yatro daryata chititalo darananaya bibrat.
Building Tanang Sakalaya Gamaya Manantaha
Prodim tanum sakala jagamaimananta.
Antar Maharnava Upagata Madidaityang
Antar mahanava bhagatam aditijaitam.
Tangdang Staraya Drimiva Vajradaro Darara
Tam dam stara dream eva vraja daro darara.
Brahmovacha
Brahmovacha.
Yatro Dyata Shititalo Dharanaya Bibrat
Yatro daryata chititalo dananarara bibrat.
Prodim Tanum Sakala Yagya Manantaha
Prodim tanum sakala jagamaimananta.
Antarma Harnava Upagatam Adi Daityam
Antar maharnava bhagatim adijajaitam.
Tamdam Shrayadimiva Vajradaro Dadara
Tam dam saradrim eva raja daro darara. Brahmovacha.
Yatro Jatakshiti Talo Dharanaya Dvibrat
Yatro dayata chititalo daranaya bibrat.
Krodim Dhanum Sagala Yagya Manantaha
Prodim tanum sakala jagamaimananta.
Antar Maharnava Upagatimari Daitam
Antar mahanava bhagatam adidaitam.
Tangdang Trayadrim Iva Vajradharo Dadara
Tam dam stara dream eva vraja daro dadara.
Brahmovacha
Brahmovacha
Yatro Dyatakshititalo Dharanaya Bibrat
Yatro Dayata Chititalo Dananaya Bibrat
Krodim Tanum Sakala Yagya Manantaha
Krodim Tanum Sakala Jagamai Mananta
Antar Mahanava Upagatam Adidaicham
Antar Mahanava Bhagatim Adida Daitam
Tam Dam Strayatram Eva Vadra Daro Dara Dara
Tam Dam Stara Dream Eva Raja Daro Dadara
Jai Jagannath. Brahmovacha
Vamo Vacha
Yatro Yatakshititalo
Yatro Dayata Chititalo Dadnaraya Bibrat Rodim Tanum Sakala Jagamai Mananta Antar Mahanava Bhagatam Adiyaitam Tam Astara Dream Eva Vraja Daro Dadara
Brahmovacha
Vamo Vacha
Yatro Dyatakshititalo Dharanaya Vibrat
Yatro Dayata Chititado Dananara Bibrat
Krodim Tanum Sakalaya Gyamayi Manantaha
Krodim Tanum Sakala Jagamai Mananta
Antar Maharnava Upagatam Adidaityam
Antar Mahanava Bhagatam Adijaitam
Tam Dam Strayadrimiva Vajra Daro Dadara
Tam Dam Astaradrim Eva Vraja Daro Dadara
Brahmovacha
Brahmo Vacha
Yatro Dayatakshititalo Dharanaya Bibrat
Yatro Daryata Chititalo Dananara Bibrat
Kravdim Tanam Sakala Gnana Maya Anantaha
Krodim Tanum Sakala Jagamai Mananta
Antar Maharanava Upatam Adidaityam
Antar Mahanava Bhagatam Adijaitam
Tam Dam Strayai Iva Vraja Darodadara
Tam Dam Astara Dream Eva Vraja Daro Dadara. So everyone chanted, anyone online like to chant? All right. So word by word synonyms, Brahma Vacha. Lord Brahma said, Yatra, at that time, when Udayata attempted Chiktitala, the planet Earth, Udadadanaya, for the matter of lifting, Vibhrat, assumed, Prodim, pastimes, Tanum, form, Sakala, total, Jaga Maim, all inclusive sacrifices, Ananta, the unlimited, Antar, within the universe, Maha Arnave, the great Garba ocean, Upagatam, having arrived at, Adi, the first, Jaityam, demon, Tam, him, Damstraya, by the tusk, Adream, the flying mountains, Eva, light, Rajadara, the controller of the thunderbolts, the Dara, pierce. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Lord Brahma said, when the unlimitedly powerful Lord assumed the form of a boar as a pastime, just to lift the planet Earth, which was drowned in the great ocean of the universe called the Garpadak, the first demon, Hiranyaksha, appeared, and the Lord pierced him with his tusk. Since the beginning of creation, the demons and the demigods, or the Vaishnavas, are always the two classes of living beings to dominate the planets of the universe. Lord Brahma is the first demigod, and Hiranyaksha is the first demon in this universe. Only under certain conditions do the planets float as weightless balls in the air. And as soon as these conditions are disturbed, the planets may fall down in the Garbadak Ocean, which covers half the universe. The other half is the spherical dome within which the innumerable planetary systems exist. The floating of the planets in the weightless air is due to the inner constitution of the globes, and the modernized drilling of the earth to exploit oil from within is a sort of disturbance by the modern demons and can result in a greatly harmful reaction to the floating condition of the earth. A similar disturbance was created formerly by the demons headed by Hiranyaksha, the great exploiter of the gold rush, and the earth was detached from its weightless condition and fell down into the Garbadak Ocean. The Lord, as maintainer of the whole creation and the material world, therefore, assumed the gigantic form of a boar with a proportionate snout and picked up the earth from within the water of Garbadak. Sri Jayadeva Goswami, the great Vaishnava poet, sang as follows. Prasati tasana sekare tanrani tava lagna shisna kalanaka kaleva nirmagna Keshavadrita Sukara Rupa Jaya Jagadishare. O Keshava, a supreme Lord, have assumed the form of a boar. O Lord, the planet Earth rested on your tusk, and it appeared like the moon engraved with spots. Since the symptom of the incarnation of the Lord, such is the symptom of an incarnation of the Lord. The incarnation of the Lord is not the concocted idea of fanciful men who create an incarnation out of imagination. The incarnation of the Lord appears under certain extraordinary circumstances, like the above-mentioned occasion, and the incarnation performs a task which is not even imaginable by the tiny brain of mankind. The modern creators of the many cheap incarnations may take note of the factual incarnation of God as the gigantic boar with a suitable snout to carry the planet Earth. When the Lord appeared to pick up the earth, the demon of the name Hiranyaksha tried to create a disturbance in the methodical functions of the Lord, and therefore he was killed by being pierced by the Lord's tusk. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, the demon Hiranyaksha was killed by the hand of the Lord. Therefore, his version is that after being killed by the hand of the Lord, the demon was pierced by the tusk. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur confirms this version. So yeah, there's some pretty good details there. So you can just imagine the size of Lord Boar, right? What was it? It was a meteorite hit Jupiter, and the meteorite was really big. They said it was so big you can fit 3 planet Earths in it. So Lord Boar had to be pretty big, about the size of Jupiter or something, be able to lift the planet Earth up with a suitable snout, just one part of his body. Right, so you're talking about the planet Earth being completely dwarfed in the presence of Lord Boar. So, and what was it in the lecture that I was listening to the last week? They mentioned some details about there's these fairy tales, right? He'd mentioned Hans Christian Andersen and Grimm's fairy tales, and let's see, who's the other one? There's Aesop's fables, right? So he's saying these are fanciful imaginations, right? And but the Lord's activities, they're not some imagination from some author. Jai Gorni Taiki Jai, like Hans Christian Andersen or someone like that, whoever the Grimm's brothers are. This isn't just some imaginary fairy tales or what they want to call it, like in like folklore, Indian folklore, right? That Krishna lifted the Govardhan hill and danced with the gopis and killed so many demons, like Johnny Appleseed or something. That's just Indian folklore. But this actual really fact, this actual real history, this actually really happened. And the Lord actually performs his activities just to attract the conditioned souls to his devotional service. As what was mentioned in the class on this verse was that we came into the material world. Now we don't have the desire to serve Krishna due to false identification with material body and the senses. We're desiring to lord it over material nature, which is the purpose of coming into the material world. The material world is arranged in such a way that we would be elevated by performing devotional service, and is actually meant for devotional service, not actually for the false happiness, which is actually really the suffering of the conditioned souls. But that this is an arrangement that's made by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by Krishna. So then it was explaining how, like in the fifth canto, creation is explained, and it begins with false ego. And then from false ego comes the three modes of material nature. And so then from the three modes of material nature, it manifests in the subtle sense objects, in the mode of ignorance, and in the mode of passion, the actual sense organs. In the mode of goodness is jnana tattva, or knowledge, knowledge of the Supreme. So then this knowledge, this is actually in the mode of goodness, and it's actually predominated by the demigods that are actually in control, in the universal affairs of. So that's in the mode of goodness. So then he was explaining how Sukadeva Goswami is answering Maharaj Parikshit's inquiries. What is the prime duty for one who is about to die? And of course, that's engaging in devotional service. It's hearing and chanting and remembering and worshiping specifically Krishna, not the demigods. He was mentioning that in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna condemns the worship of the demigods, those who are attached to the flowery words of the Vedas. They worship the demigods for benefits that are temporary. So he said, by this hearing and chanting and worshiping the demigods, the result is that you can, your next destination can be somewhere that is actually useless, or it's somewhere in the heavenly planets again, right? But one's prime duty is become detached, right? By knowledge and detachment, then one can understand the Supreme and engage in devotional service. So the whole process of explaining the creation in the universal form. So we were just studying 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the universal form. So this is the Purusha Shukta, the universal form. The last chapter is called Purusha Shukta Confirmed. So Sanaka Rishi is inquiring from Suta Goswami about what he had heard from Sukadeva Goswami when he was answering Maharaj Parikshit's questions. Is what is one's prime duty when one is about to die? And so that's hearing, chanting, remembering, and worshiping Krishna, specifically, not the demigods, like that. And so what was happening is that he was saying that Sanaka Rishi was listening to Suta Goswami, and Sanaka Rishi was the most advanced and learned transcendentalist in the assembly of Namasaranya at that time. And so he was attached to hearing Suta Goswami describe the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so he was under the impression that maybe, since he already answered the question, maybe that was going to be the end. So then he started beginning the discussion about how Maharaj Sukadeva Goswami is a poet, very poetic, and a very great learned speaker, and a great Bhagavata devotee since the beginning of his birth, that he had heard the pastimes of Lord Krishna and has realized in that. So he would continue to go on speaking. So what's happening now is that Suta Goswami is describing that after answering Maharaj Parikshit's question, he's giving a reference or the source of where this conversation came from, where the description of the universal form is. Narada Muni had inquired pretty much the same way as what Maharaj Priskit was inquiring. It was like, what is our duty? What is the prime necessity of human life? What is the actual subject matter for hearing and chanting? Right? So, Narada Muni wanted to know who is supreme. What is this universe? How did this universe manifest? What is our duty? Who are the Leela avatars? So that's what this chapter is, the scheduled incarnations, the Leela avatars. That was also described in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna is the source of all incarnations. So there's a list there of the incarnations. Supreme Lord. It also included a description of Srila Sukadeva Goswami and Narada Muni, like that. You know, it also described Lord Bor, and there was Lord Buddha. Jayadeva Goswami, he included these incarnations in his verses. The great stotra. We sing the verse for Lord Nrsingadev that was written by Jayadeva Goswami, the Jaya Jagadishare. So what he was explaining is that, well, one should become progressively detached. So that's the whole idea by hearing about the universal form, the form of the Lord, to understand. It's for the materialistic person and the impersonalist, that to study the Lord and his energies in an indirect way, in an indirect devotional service, but it brings one to the mode of goodness, be able to understand that Krishna is the personality of Godhead. He's the source of all creation. So there was the description there given, and he described what we had heard after hearing about the universal form, the position of the planets in the universe. Then there was the description of meditation on the super soul within, and it was actually mentioned that, you know, after amalgamating all of the senses, that one enters the mind into the self, and then the self into super self within the heart, who's holding a club, wheel of a chariot, conch shell, and lotus flower. So then that description's given. And then what it was described is that the yogi, he progressively elevates himself to higher and higher planets. So, you know, and then crosses the Milky Way, Svarloka, and goes to Satyaloka. And then in Satyaloka, it was explained that one can actually reverse the creative process of the universe, right? That going backwards now from Earth is the odor, it's the quality of odor. So it has all of the form. You can see it, you can feel it, you can taste it, right? And then comes water. So earth into earth, water into water. So water is the element. You can see it, you can feel it, and you can taste it, right? And then there's fire. So fire comes the element of vision, of seeing, of sight. So one can enter the vision and sight into the sun, into the fire god. And so you can feel its heat and light, and you can hear it, right? And you can see it. And so then more subtle than that is the air. So you can feel the air. You can't see it, right? But you can feel the air and you can hear it. And then more subtle than that is the ether and that sound, right? And then there's the mind, the subtle body, subtle energy, mind, intelligence, false ego. So by again extracting false ego from the three modes of material nature, from the sense objects, the senses, and with knowledge and detachment, then they can actually go into the spiritual world, extract themselves from matter as pure spiritual soul. So he was talking about this, that this was the whole idea. And he gives an example of how when he was in Mayapur, he was studying this the universal form and looking in things in a philosophical way, that this is Krishna's energy. So you can see how this is like Krishna's energy, right? And then there's the three modes of material nature and how they're in how they're working, their manifestations of the three modes of material nature. And so you can see that everything in a philosophical way. So he was mentioning that the Vedas are saying, don't waste your time worshiping the demigods. Their results are temporary, and will distract you from the actual absolute truth. It will just confuse you, right? You'll get confused about the actual subject matter for hearing and chanting. But by becoming more progressively detached from anything else that is not related to Krishna, anything else that's not related to your devotional service, as he was stating that Sukadeva Goswami again and again and again is stressing devotional service. And that's the actual duty of the living soul. And gradually, as one becomes more and more detached by engaging in devotional service and hearing and chanting about Krishna's name, Krishna's pastimes, then one becomes more and more purified. So that's the whole process, is hearing, chanting, remembering, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archavandhanam, Dashanam. So he also was giving this verse, Savai Mana Pumsam, Ahoitiki Apratiyata, right? And that was stated in the first canon of Srimad Bhagavatam. And it stresses the same thing, engaging in devotional service, being detached, not cultivating sense gratification, but engaging in devotional service with no material motives. Engaging in devotional service just for the sake of engaging in devotional service without any material motive of any material benefit, like that. So, to understand one's actual spiritual constitutional position and spiritual soul is part and parcel of Krishna and not being in the material body. So that's the whole purpose of hearing about Krishna's Leelas, Krishna's avatars, especially in the form of Lord Boar, today's verse that we're hearing. So Prabhupada has mentioned this, that Lord Brahma was the first demigod in the universe, and then Hiranyaksha is the first demon in the universe. So we're actually hearing a conversation where Narada Muni and Brahma, who's speaking 1.5 trillion years ago, right? And it still holds truth. It's not changed, right? It's still true even today. It's not like material knowledge. What was that? Did you ever see that thing? They used to do this at school or whatever, do a demonstration. They'd whisper something into someone's ear, and they'd whisper that to the next person. And finally, when it gets to the end of the line, that person will tell us what they were passing along, and it's a completely different message. Somehow or other, it gets changed around. Right, but this is through the Parampara Disciplic succession, there's remaining unaltered. It's not being speculated upon. It's being handed down exactly as they heard it from their spiritual masters. So Sukadeva Goswami is explaining exactly what he heard from Srila Vyasadeva when he was in the womb. And then Sutta Goswami, he's explaining exactly what he heard from Maharaj Prisket answering Sanaka Rishi's questions in the sages of the Assembly of the Sages of Namasaranya. So unchanged, untainted, as present the philosophy of Krishna consciousness just as it is. It's not a fanciful creation. Actually, they're trying to say that some author by the name of Bopadev, Prabhupada was mentioning this too in a class, in a lecture. But and then I was looking that up, and so they think it was written in some period of time, right? That a specific, Bopadev was in existence. But that's not the actual fact. It's the actual fact that this actual real histories. It's they come from the Puranas, so that's why it's called Bhagavat Purana. These are actual histories of the universe that were selected for this purpose by Srila Vyasadeva to exactly give the summary study of the Vedanta, give the actual import and the purpose of studying Vedanta. And that's to understand who is supreme, that Krishna is supreme, and that we are spiritual soul living entities with Sat, Chit, and Ananda. We're not the material body. Due to Maya or illusion, ahankara, false ego, then we identify with the material body in association with our senses and within our minds. What was that? It's in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, he who restrains the senses and organs of action, but within whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. So basically, when we're born with a set of senses. We're also born with the subtle sense objects that go along with those senses. And according to our karma, this is exactly what we're going to be getting, certain pleasures and pains through the senses by the subtle sense objects that we're born with. Jai Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. So that's actually the actual situation and the actual science of Krishna consciousness is engaging in devotional service, hearing, thinking, remembering, and worshiping specifically Krishna. And one becomes more detached and jnana and vairagya, right? So when and one gets that by engaging in devotional service. That's actually the process to be detached and increasing our knowledge about Krishna. So, are there any questions or comments or any points of discussion or? Yeah, you have a question there?
So how is it that my point was on one of the little lines in the purport, which I always thought was interesting, that by mining the earth and
that earth will fall out of its orbit by drilling the oil out of the earth, the modern day demons. Yeah, Prabhupada had mentioned that. He was saying that even like the B-52, basically according to some computers now, the B-52 bomber should have never flown, right? But he's saying that the airplanes, that they're able to fly because of the distribution of the oil that are within the craft that make it operate. So under certain circumstances, with the propellers or the jet engines or whatever, they'll lift off, down the runway, gain speed, and be able to, lift off and be able to fly. But it's actually due to some distribution of the oil within the plane. So the certain conditions are taking place there. So yeah, under certain conditions, the planets, they're very, very heavy. They're a lot larger than we are. They're always showing some picture or a statue of Atlas, a big, strong man, like this is like the supreme or it's God or one of the gods, a big, strong man with the earth on his shoulders carrying a heavy burden, right? But that's not God, right? And God, he's made some arrangement that he's holding it up, but he's holding it up as if it's weightless. Like that, and under certain conditions, then the earth can fall from its orbit, as in the case of Hiranyaksha had mined the earth of its gold, and the earth fell down from its position that he had completely upset the earth so much. So the modern scientists, the astronomers, they know that there's something going on with dirt. They're saying that this is actual normal. It happened, within a specific cycle, that this has happened before, like so many millions of years ago. They're theorizing so many different things. But, they were able to detect, I saw this on the television program in 1988, is that they were watching the polar ice caps started getting, a little puddle, it got a little puddle, and they checked it both at the the North Pole and the South Pole. And they were kind of wondering where this water is coming from, when they're getting this little puddle, and it started to get larger. And then it was about the size of Lake Erie. So they had some scientists go up there with some submarines and stuff, and they're trying to examine the soil. They're trying to figure out what's going on. But the astronomers, they were able to tell that the Earth was actually shifting in its axis. This axis was actually shifting. And this was right around the time when they're saying that smog went so far up into the air that it's destroyed the ozone layer. And so then many harmful sun rays were penetrating our atmosphere and was causing some atmospheric problems with the Earth, right? So that's the oil right there. And the oil went up and the smoke went up in there, caused pollution. So they drilled the oil out of the Earth. Oh, and then they're trying to say that the oil fields is that once you drill all the oil out of it, there won't be any oil left. But that's not actually true, right? They've been raising the prices, saying there's a shortage of oil, and there's actually no shortage of oil. It doesn't actually deplete itself, but they can deplete it at such a rate where it's not actually replenishing itself as fast as they're taking it out. Oh, that's another issue. So, so then that was when they started talking about global warming, right? Within a few months or a few years after that, then they're discussing global warming. And they were, theorizing, making so many different points and plans. But, something kind of tells me that a lot of this stuff has to do with, like, there was a nuclear power plant accident in Simi Valley in the 50s. It was actually the first nuclear power plant accident. And it was actually really the first nuclear power plant. Right. And it had an accident. Basically, I was reading what type of plant it is, and it's a really, really strong reactor. And they really didn't understand at that time about the specific types of reactors and their strength and their effects. But the type of reactor that they made actually melted the rods. And so, Los Angeles and the surrounding area in Simi Valley were under alert of radiation, and they should have never populated the area, but they did. And the people, when they buy a house, they sign a consent form that they are acknowledging that there's radioactivity in the area and that they can get cancer and that they won't sue. They're like that, And my buddy, he said his mom, every woman at the synagogue all had breast cancer. Right. So it's a pretty common thing, but they've already signed a disclosure, right? They already gave it all away, acknowledging. So, it's still radioactive. It's still not safe. That's where John Wayne got cancer. They filmed the movie there in Santa Onofre Flats, right? So all the actors that were there, they all got cancer. And they died. So some kind of tells me that, their nuclear explosions and their nuclear accidents, the stuff is seeping into the earth. That's what they're saying about Fukushima, right? They're just really pretty much just buried it. They covered it with sand. And I guess that's what they wanted to do with Fukushima and stuff too. And then like another plant, it also melted down because they couldn't even get into the area to maintain the plants. Right. Big giant. By the time the big giant gas cloud got to Los Angeles, it was really pretty much diffused, but nobody's talking. Nobody's saying anything. It kind of smelled like somebody's rusty old house was burning. Right. And I thought it was just local to my area when I went downstairs and got on the subway, the train. Then when I got off the train, it had the same smell there too. And it was really humid. Right. And everybody's just going about their business just like normal. And then one person said to me, he said, this is that gas cloud that we've been expecting. And everybody says, oh, no, it's not anything at all. I said, yeah, it smells like rust. That's iodine. right? But by the time it got across the ocean, and that was about 3 years, they probably been spraying so much stuff, you know, that it wasn't as harmful as it potentially could have been. And it was like no news at all. It's like, you know, this is the big thing we've been waiting for. And it's like, oh, there's nothing, right? We don't talk about certain things. You know, we don't talk about medication damage. We don't talk about global warming or chemtrails or you know, COVID. You know, I mean, all these things are, you know, media is talking about a whole bunch of other stuff and everything is totally censored, you know, and they'll, if you make some statements about it on your social, what do you call it? Social networking pages, then they'll put you in Facebook jail until you can get out again. Like that, you know, don't be saying, you know, I don't know, what is it stuff? Don't be talking about information that is censored. You know, be a good citizen in America. Use fluoride toothpaste. Stay in front of your TV to be misinformed. Basically, it's all about the material body to reinforce the conception of a false ego, of identification with the material body. That, you know, as we were mentioning that before, there had some sports. I think it was like in Japan or something, but everything is just all reinforced the bodily concept of life, you know, so, you know, that's pretty much the prime duty and the necessities of the demons, right? To increase your attachment, right? You increase your hankara, you know, like, and they can't, oh yeah, and I guess what they want to do, try to come up with so many more inventions for your sense gratification, but nobody's satisfied. You know, more subject matter for hearing. They can't stick with one thing. You know, they have to continue to have so many different types of varieties, but we're still chanting Hare Krishna mantra, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. We're not changing our position, or, you know, or changing our subject matter. You know, we're not becoming satiated with it. You know, we're finding, as stated in the scripture itself, newer and newer pleasures, hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right, when we hear like another piece of detail, you know, it sounds really cool, and it kind of sticks, you know, and we get attached to it. You know, it's like total nectar to the ears. Subject matter we're hearing, and the demons are like, or those ears that never hear the pastimes or the holy name of the Supreme Lord, are like the holes of the snakes where the snakes live. Like that. Yeah. So, or you have a question?
Thank you for a nice presentation, Prabhu. You're mentioning all these kind of incidences and toxic influences, chemtrails, and things of that sort that the population were being bombarded with. I was just curious, is this one idea that's in pop culture that's come out, and they had like a series of movies about it, and it's really quite popular, and you can actually see it on cars. People have the different stickers and stuff on cars. This idea of transformers, does it come together at all with anything what you're saying about the pollution of the society?
Transformers?
Right. Yes, transformers.
Yeah, transformers. Yeah. My idea of transformers is the car that turns into a robot and then he folds back up again into a car again. Are you talking about that? Transformers? Yeah, I just see that as like, you know, a mechanical arrangement by engines. Yeah, it's a robot. It's a car. Oh, is that Transformers? Yeah, they're saying like the body is the temple for the soul. So yeah, the body is a car, a vehicle, a yantra. It's carried by the three modes of material nature and the senses by an unbridled mind. And the bewildered spiritual soul is the passenger, right? And the mind is the reins. Like that. Are you talking about that? Oh, you mean like transhuman, like transhuman, trying to incorporate machine and man together? Yeah, it's affected by it. It causes cancer. It causes cancer and death. You know, there can be mutations. They've been finding a lot of weird stuff in the ocean lately. Some stuff's been coming out. Or there's like, when there's going to be an earthquake, there's like this really big, long fish that comes out of the ocean. They found one in Mexico, and there was an earthquake the next day, and they found one in Japan. And there was an earthquake the next day, you know. So yeah, there's a lot of phenomena going on. There's a lot like hundreds of beached whales and dolphins, and you know, like the ocean is like dying. But you know, oh yeah, and some of this other stuff, some fish with a gorilla head and some fish with a lion head, and it was a really, really big fish too. Some really kind of weird things that they've been finding. You know, some sort of mutations, but yeah, it can cause mutations. You know, I don't know exactly what the agenda is, but the demons, you know, they create these things and cause havoc, you know, in the name of science. I know that they've been, gene manipulation and combining different species, you know, to see how long they can live, or you know, making some really weird things like some spider goats, or, you know, some weird things like that. You know, this is the activity of the demons. You know, why not make something nice, but they make these weird monsters or something, you know? Or what was the other thing I was just thinking? You know, yeah, the misinformation and other really, what Ananda, he said, other really, really crappy problems, and they're really, really crappy solutions for these problems. And Prabhupada says it's all Band-Aid patchwork. You know, it doesn't really. Oh, yeah. And everything other than devotional service, right? It doesn't satisfy the soul. So that's what he was saying about like worshiping the demigods and ending up in some destination where it's illusory, you know, in some weird place. And that doesn't satisfy the soul. But yeah, the demons, the karmis, they're doing some pretty weird stuff, but I don't know what's going on with their bodies, what's going on with I heard the chemtrails were supposed to be changing us, and it has nanotechnology in it and stuff, you know. Now they're talking about transhumanism. Now they're talking about transgenderism, you know, beginning with your kids, have your kids get a transgender operation by force. You know, and they're, they're having these gay parades in elementary school, you know, and to get the kids all hyped up about the rainbow and trans, what do they call it? You know, yeah, so they're doing a lot of really weird things. I was just reading this. They said that the White House wants to, you know, I looked it up, I guess the whitehouse.com.gov or whatever. They got a plan for like COVID vaccinations and testing and masks, right? But COVID was officially declared ended in May. What was it? 2023. I think it was May 11th, 2023. But they're saying that there's still variants of it that are still going around. It's very contagious. Some of it's not making people sick, but it can flare up. But so apparently still in society somewhere. The FDA actually have disapproved the use of the vaccines, but they're still pushing vaccines. A lot of companies are hiring, but a vaccination is required. So the FDA has actually admitted that this is actually dangerous, and the manufacturers of Pfizer, Moderna, right, are specifically named to mention. But, you know, I mean, this is the karmis. They're all confused. You know what I mean? They, you know, they're still on some agenda or something that's already been proven faulty. They still want to push it, So yeah, this is the subject matter of the demons. Yeah, so maybe I can look into that just a little bit more, but I've heard that the chemtrails themselves have nanotechnology in it. They want to merge man and machine. I saw that they're doing a lot of building a lot of really realistic androids. There's a few different companies. They're really, really expensive. They're millions of dollars each. Somebody was saying that the depopulation agenda is to replace us with androids, or replace us with illegal aliens who are flooding the border, by hundreds every night, and they're carrying battle rifles, right? And the government's not doing anything about it, try to stop it, but they're building them a whole city for them. So they have some place to stay or some place to live for homeless illegal aliens. They're just flooding into the country illegally. So, this is the subject matter of demons. They're confused. They need to hear, chant, glorify, remember, and worship the Supreme Personality of God. Now, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that this subject matter, one worships Krishna with his intelligence, and that this subject matter is it brings one to sanity. Otherwise, they're just all insane. They're not insane and crazy. They don't seem to make any sense. Yeah. So I don't know. Does that kind of answer your question? Kind of satisfy you that, at least in the Krishna conscious way? Yeah. Are there any other questions, comments, or discussions? Or Srimad Bhagavatam class, Ki Joy.